Hi, and welcome to my FlossTube channel. I'm Jane Farish, and I am so glad that you're here with me today. I have some exciting breaking news from 1836. I had the incredible pleasure and honor to be a part of a Zoom meeting for a sampler guild down in Atlanta. It's called the Magnolia Sampler Guild, and they were incredibly gracious and invited me to come via Zoom and talk about the Jannet Irving Sampler. And in preparation for doing that, I decided to do a little bit more research on my own. And the big discovery is that Jannet was not 17 years old when she stitched her sampler. She was 7 years old. Let me tell you how I came to find out about that. When I wrote the preface for the Jannet Irving Sampler publication, I was using research that had been done by someone in the Irving Farish family that told me the date that Jannet was born. And from that, it was easy to ascertain that she was 17 when she finished the sampler, since her date for completion is on the sampler as May 3rd, 1836. I found a really good source for doing research about people that lived in Scotland hundreds of years ago. And I used that to see if I could find just more information about Jannet. Now, one of my advantages is that I knew that her parents' name were John and Jean Irving because, again, that's on her sampler. So from that, when I researched Jannet Irving, I found that there were a lot of girls named Jannet Irving around that same time frame. And as I clicked through the records, I found the one whose parents were John and Jean. And from that, discovered Janet's birth date. So I have here on the screen, I can show you the record that I found. Let me get the right piece of paper in front of me. So this is a copy from a record of birth from 1829 from the parish where Jannet was born. And we can see all the way down here, let me come in closer, that Jannet, daughter to John Irving and Jean Bell, spouses in Burnside, born September 13th, baptized September 22nd. So obviously Jannet was 7, not 17 when she stitched the sampler, which to a sampler historian makes so much more sense. 17 was way up in the upper age range for someone to be stitching this type of a sampler. So I was just really excited about that, and I wanted to share that with you. I found out more during this little bit of research, but I'm going to save that for another episode because there's so much more that I want to share with you about some other samplers. In more up-to-date news, my daughter Elizabeth finished her copy of the Jane Hattersley sampler. Now this is the one that I'm also stitching a little bit different colorway and on a lighter ground cloth, a lighter color of linen. But I did want to show you that at least one of the two of us got this done. As I mentioned in a previous episode, and we've been chatting about it in the Jane Farish Needlework Stitch Along Facebook group, about starting a stitch along for this sampler on April 9th to coincide with the date on Jane's sampler. Now right now, I still don't know whether that's her birth date or whether that's the date she finished her sampler. I'm still doing some research, and of course, like so many other things, this whole COVID crisis is slowing down the lines of communication. And then, of course, with the holiday period. So I'm really hoping to have a more definite answer to that question later on. So what we're going to do is by January 4th, we will ship to shops that have pre-ordered the sampler, so you can buy it directly from your favorite local needlework store. You can get a printed copy. and of course buy your linen, or this can be done on Aida. There's not any fancy stitches, and there's not any stitching over one. So you can choose your threads, whether you want to use DMC or Cosmo Floss or over dyes or silk or whatever. That'll be your choice. If you want to buy a PDF version, you can get it from my Etsy store starting January 4th. And we're just real excited about that. And of course, I won't be stitching along with you, but I'll be rooting with you as you're finishing yours. And I think I'm going to do some other things just to kind of go along with this. Maybe a scissor fob or something like that. I just thought it'd be kind of fun to throw that in as you're stitching your big sampler. Let me see if there's anything else I'm supposed to tell you about Jane. Oh, the PDF will have both the authentic reproduction version like this one, as well as kind of my take on what I think Jane would have done if she were sitting by my side and stitching with me and had access to the kind of colors that you and I do in this modern age. So that's the news on Jane. Oh, there is one other thing about Jane. I'm going to make a separate video, how-to video, on how I pin a sampler like this to acid-free foam core in preparation for framing. I've picked out the frame already. I'm really excited about it. It'll be ready for me next week, so I can get this photographed and get everything all put together for that January 4th mail date. I don't know, I'm really proud of my daughter's stitching. She did an excellent job with this. I know you will too. This episode is turning into one that's just all about samplers, which is probably a good thing, because the next thing I want to talk about is this sort of an updated, modernized take on the Roxana Corson sampler. And how this all came about was a couple people made the comment that it was an attractive sampler and everything, but the colors didn't really appeal to them. And then that just made me start thinking about, well, again, what if I did a completely new take on this sampler and not only changed the colors, but then that led me into thinking about how in the original Roxana Corson, she has these large motifs, and frankly, it's a lot of just plain, filling in a large area with solid cross stitch, and that doesn't appeal to a lot of people. It frankly doesn't appeal to me. I didn't stitch the reproduction; someone else did, for my benefit, of course, and I of course appreciate that even more so because there was so much repetitive stitching. So then I thought, what if you took these large things and did a variety of stitches instead of doing it all in cross stitch? Things like the rice stitch and others that would lend itself well to the count and the size of these images. So then that, of course, led me into thinking about making teaching videos to go along with it. So here's the deal with this new one, which I am, at this point, the working title is Roxie, because I figured in this day and age, if her name was Roxana, we would probably call her Roxie. So look for a sampler that's a lot brighter in colors. Here's a quick image of my work in progress of the colors I'm thinking about. When I choose a color scheme, I choose my families of colors, and I actually start with more colors than I know I'm going to use. I will probably end up with about 20 different colors in this sampler. And when I say colors, shades of colors within these families. I'm going to make this a mystery sampler, and I'm almost ready to show you what the first installment will be. I'm thinking of doing it in 6 installments, and starting, and I hope this isn't too ambitious, but starting March 1st. March 15th, I think, at the latest. Right now, as you are probably aware and have been frustrated by the lag time in shipping, and also the disruption of the whole supply line of things like linen and floss and needles, whatever, all the various things that we needle workers rely on. We have more time to stitch right now, but then it becomes a challenge to get the materials. And as a designer, I face the same things that you do and that shops do. I have already bought, in fact, received today enough linen for the first 100 kits. And depending on the response, then I'm ready to order more. And I already checked with my supplier to make sure that this is a color that's in production. You know, fingers crossed that we don't end up with this color dropping. And in fact, I will share with you, I just love the name of this. It's vanilla, no, it's not vanilla. It is, I can't find it now. I want to say it's Victorian sponge cake, which I think is just yummy. And the color palette will be very spring-like. It'll be just perfect for that early part of spring. So let me tell you what details I know, and I'm feeling like I'm being very scattered about this, and I apologize. So I know it will have the rice, eyelet, long arm, herringbone, stem, satin stitches, and very likely more. As I said, I'm thinking of it as being a 6-part mystery stitch along. There will be 6 instructional videos to go with it. There's not going to be any over one stitching like there is in the original Roxana. So that will, you know, in case you're wondering about that, I'm going to kit it up with a 30 count linen. So stitched over 2 will give you 15 stitches to the inch. I have modified the size of the sampler so that it will fit in a standard 16 by 20 frame. And I already have my eye on a couple of just ready-made off-the-shelf frames that I think will work really, really well with it. So, you know, when possible, I try to do that. Just, you know, again, I don't want to take anything away from people who do custom framing for a living. And of course, you've got that option if you want to do custom framing. But if you know, if I have a budget, I'm sure you do too. And so if you would like to save a little bit on framing cost, it will fit in a 16 by 20 frame. I am going to ask you, if you are seriously interested, to send me an email to jeanfarish@gmail.com, and I will consider that your order. You can tell me whether you want just the chart or the full kit, which of course will be the chart. In both cases, if you order the chart, you'll get the chart and instructional videos as they come out. And if you want the full kit, you get the chart and videos, linen, and Cosmo floss, as well as a needle. In fact, I think probably the best thing to do is once you send me an email, I'm going to reply with an email with all this information in it so that you're very clear. And if at that point you're not interested, you can just send back a reply saying, take my name off the list. I am going to use Square for payment. And if you have gone to any sort of small business where they have a little thing out, you know, back in the day when you could go to the hairdresser and the bagel place and whatnot, there's little things that come up and they have you sign it and add a tip or whatever. That's Square. And that's the same company that I'm going to be using for billing. And I'm doing this so that I don't expect or ask for payment until I am ready to ship. Again, with so many disruptions in supply line, I don't want to tie up anybody's money unnecessarily. So once I have your kit ready to send, I will send you a Square invoice by email. And then as soon as you pay it, then your thing goes right in the mail. And by doing it this way also, as I have each new section done, then I will simply email it to you, and it will have a link to the video, etc. So I think it's going to go really smoothly once we get started. And again, it just fascinates me that we're taking this absolutely age-old well, for today, it's a luxury and a pastime for us to do this type of needlework, and using these incredible technologies to bring us together and to just, get the information out to you, to be able to send you a chart and to send you a link to a video by email. I am sure that Roxana and Jannet, if we could go back and talk to them and say, guess what we're going to be doing in 2021? They would never believe it. As I'm sure that whatever happens 150 years from now, we would probably have a hard time believing as well. So, cost. What I am looking at is $15 for the chart and videos, and $70 for the full kit that's going to have the chart, the videos, the linen, and the floss all in it. So I'm really excited about it. And I will, next week on our episode, the one that falls between Christmas and New Year's, I will have more details to share with you as far as what the sampler is going to look like. But I really encourage you, if you're interested, to go ahead and let me know. I've already placed an order for one batch of floss, and on January 4th, sometime that first week in January, I'll be placing my next order. So anybody who's ordered between now and January 4th, they will be in that first batch. And so that's kind of where I am with that. So we've had news on Jannet, we've had news on Jane, now we have news on Roxana, and my last bit of sampler news has to do with the next round sampler, like the Hearts Come Home at Christmas sampler. I've already designed the next one in the series, and it's going to be my Christmas Day start. Of course, since I'm not going to be starting until Christmas Day, I can't show you a stitched model, but this is my working copy of just the computer-generated color copy of the chart. And what I thought it would be fun to do would be to show you the process that I went through in terms of the sort of details that I try to pay attention to in the design process. So let me start with this version, which is actually version number 4. So we're sort of starting not in the middle. I wish this were the middle. This was actually number 4 out of 12 renditions. So I don't know. I think that you'll be interested in it, maybe not. So let's take a look. So this is what it looked like when I threw out this idea on the Facebook group. And the first thing, of course, was that I decided was that I would use the same colors that I used in the Hearts Come Home at Christmas, so that those of you who have stitched that one, or are in the process of stitching it, you've already got the floss. So that was one of my design constraints. I could not use any colors that were not in that original set. So this is what I came up with. Again, this was like version number 4. And these colors aren't 100% accurate because, we're taking a computer-generated copy that's trying to match a floss color, etc., etc. So just bear with me on that. So this is what I came up with first. And the dog is actually from an antique sampler. Many of these motifs, in fact, I think really actually all of them are from antique samplers of one sort or another, from sketches that I've made and museum studies, etc., and then just put them all together. So that was the first version. So then on this one, you can see that at this point, what I've done is I've flipped it over. And I did that because I felt like that in this one, the tree sort of crowded into the piece, and that because the word on has this empty space here, that it would be a little bit better. So I simply flipped everything over. And at this point, I've also changed the dog. So he looks a little bit more like a dog, but I also thought he kind of looked like a calf. I mean, it's sort of long-legged for a dog. So let me see in the next one. Yeah, so in this one, then, version number 6, I shortened the dog's legs. As my daughter says, I cut them off at the knees. And I'm trying to think what else I changed. They were the big things. And, at some point I changed the color of the bird from being a red to being blue. I kept feeling like that Peace on Earth wasn't standing out enough and that I was having trouble with the colors of the tulips. I felt like they were competing, as well as this flower as well, with the predominant colors being pink. So I changed those to blue. That meant I needed to change these little dots from blue. I just reversed these in the next version. I also at some point added a stitch in this flower motif. Oh, one thing that those of you with letters M and W and some of the bigger letters in your initials is I left plenty of room that you'll be able to put your letters in that space without moving things around. Each time, of course, I think I'm done. And then I go back and I think, let me think about one more thing. So I was still struggling with how this flower I felt took away from, I wanted Peace on Earth to be like the first thing that you see. And so I flipped it around and put the darker pink at the bottom instead of at the top. Still wasn't really happy with that. And then the final version, what I decided to do was to do it predominantly with a lighter color and then add just a little bit of the darker across the top. I'm sure every designer goes through this process and they each have their own ways. I tend to leave something like this on my computer desktop or physically laying out on a tabletop. So when I walk through the room, I glance at it and it's like if I don't see Peace on Earth the first thing when I'm glancing at it, then I know something is out of kilter and I need to make some adjustment somewhere. So that's the process that I go through, and I'm sure every designer has their own ways. I'm sure many of the things that we do are similar, and then everybody adds their own little quirks to it. And I really needed to be particularly diligent with this one because those of you who would also like to start on Christmas Day, I'm going to go ahead and make this available now. This is something I've never done. I always stitch my models before I publish a design. And so this is the first time I'll be doing this. So if you are interested, I am hoping that as you are watching this, that it's already in my Etsy store. But if you go there and you don't see the Peace on Earth Christmas sampler, don't panic. I didn't get it all put together before I started making this video. And as soon as I finish with this, then that's what I'm going to be doing. And I'm hoping that I have it all put in place for you. So that's where we are with that. Whew, that's a lot of samplers. There's a lot that I'm looking forward to in 2021, but I don't want to rush through the holiday period either. I am so looking forward to spending time by Zoom with my extended family. I feel particularly blessed because last year, Christmas of 2019, my daughter Catherine and her husband Rick were able to come from Colorado to our home here in North Carolina and spend an entire week with us. And I had not been together with my two girls, spouses, kids, etc., since I don't know when. I don't think we've ever spent a week together at Christmas since they were old enough to leave for college. So we really treasured that time, and it's particularly valued considering that we're not going to get to see them this year other than by Zoom, and that's going to have to be good enough. We don't have to be in the same room to share the spirit of Christmas and to express our love for each other. And I know you're going to be able to do that as well with your family. So besides getting Peace on Earth into my Etsy store, the other thing that's really calling me is the kitchen. And I have Christmas cookies to bake. And this is what hangs in my kitchen as a reminder. And this little elf is rolling out some gingerbread. I don't think we're going to make gingerbread from scratch this year. But we have a list of recipes that we make every year. And in fact, I think I might share some of those recipes with you as well. I hope that wherever you are and whatever holidays that you are celebrating, that you stitch happy and stay safe. I'll see you next week.